Welcome to TechTO Quick Takes. I'm your host, Alex Reilly, and here's what's been making headlines over the past few weeks in Canadian tech. Golden Ventures shining bright with a new fund. The future of Techstars Toronto remains up in the air. 1Password makes a new acquisition. And finally, a few important lightning rounds that we want to discuss in today's episode. And Alex Norman is here to help break it all down and share why it's important for the community. Hi, Alex.
Hey, Alex, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's nice to see the sun today and to see that it seems like spring is around the corner. So very positive. And of course, some positive news to kind of kick off, I guess, the show today with just the news out of Golden Ventures, and obviously positive in terms of what we're hearing for the Canadian funding scene. So I'll just maybe get you to kick it off and just share high level what the news is there from them.
Okay, so late last week, Golden Ventures announced that they're closing their fifth fund, or they've closed their fifth fund with 103 million USD in backing. So pretty exciting news.
Yeah, and that's obviously quite a large, round of fundraising to close as well. So can you just tell us more about Golden? Because I know obviously there's going to be niche things that are unique to them and their portfolio and such.
So for people that don't know Golden, they're sector agnostic. So that means they'll invest across software, hardware. I think they like saying they've done anything from temporary tattoos to quantum. That invest across Canada, predominantly seed round. Out of this fund, they expect to make 30 what they call core positions. So those are, positions that they're going to fully invest in. Those investment sizes are typically between $500,000 to $3 million entry point. What's interesting here is Golden was able to quickly raise due to their track record and I guess the support of their LPs, because most of their institutional LPs have returned. There was one new one. So I'll give you an idea of their institutional LPs. There's HarborVest Partners, Kensington Capital, Northleaf, and Terralus. If you don't know who those are, there's all ones that get money through the federal government called Vicky funds. They also have RBC, Foundry. Foundry is a famous fund out of Colorado. It's actually just announced they're not going to raise any more funds, so that's interesting there. BDC Capital, and I think Deloitte Ventures was a new one. So a lot of institutional support, quickly wrote up checks, quickly committed to the fund, which is impressive during this current environment. Interestingly, the fund is the same size, and the team, will say this is the right size for seed investing in Canada.
Right, and as we like to do on this show, typically we kind of like to combine obviously relative headlines. So I didn't really intro it at the start, which kind of went right into Golden and that news, but obviously some news out of Techstars Toronto, just in terms of maybe the future and what that's going to look like, especially for their, I guess, Toronto offices and Toronto headquarters. So why don't you explain just sort of what, the future is there around
Okay, so it was very interesting Thursday, Friday, as you had what was very positive news with Golden announcing, hey, we quickly raised our fifth fund. And then Techstars had sort of non-news news. Techstars, the entity. So Techstars is a global, accelerator program. They are sort of like, historically, you had YC, which everything was in San Francisco, and then you had Techstars, which was dispersed and had accelerators in I think 300 cities at one point. They announced at the headquarters that, hey, we're going to start Techstars 2.0. So we're going to consolidate from 300 locations to 30 locations. We're moving our headquarters from Colorado to New York. And so they announced like, hey, we're going to be, our locations are going to be in cities with significant venture activities, which include startups, capital, just vibrant ecosystems. They mentioned New York and San Francisco. What they didn't mention is which of the 270 locations are going to be the ones that are closed. They didn't mention Seattle's being closed, which actually was quite surprising. And then they mentioned Toronto. So what came out late Friday afternoon, I think BetaKit covered it was that Techstars Toronto hasn't officially closed, but they're not taking any applications for the next cohort. And Sneal, who's sort of being the managing partner since it started, is transitioning out.
Right. And I think those are the two maybe important things as to why we're not sure what's going to happen. Of course, we don't really have an answer, as you said, in terms of Toronto. But yeah, the fact that there's no new batch of applicants is certainly worth talking about for sure. So as you said, last week saw obviously on the positive side about Golden, but then of course this kind of no news, as you're saying. So I guess all encompassing, what is the outlook for the Canadian tech ecosystem? What does this mean?
So, it's two different pieces of news at different stages,
Mm-hmm.
and different geographic coverages. So let's start with the Golden. And I think
Yep.
there's a contrast here, which we'll dig deeper into in a second. So Golden Ventures is net positive for the seed rounds. That means they'll be looking to investing in 30 companies, predominantly in Canada. As they've grown, they've increased the support they provide to founders. The team has grown significantly. They have more partners, more principals, more supporting partners. So you've now got a fund that's Canadian made, Canadian launched, and has grown to serve its clients, its founders, and being very focused on providing best-in-class service,
Mm-hmm.
and is had returns associated with that, and seems to be winning, and is going to be there to provide additional capital seed, which is very important in the current time that we've already seen Real Ventures delay their next funding, and who knows when the next fund will be.
Yeah.
That Golden will continue to be in the market, so that's good news for the ecosystem. Techstars is an interesting contrast. It's, let's call it the pre-seed or even the pre-seed market. It's predominantly
Mm-hmm.
focused in Toronto, so that means the Toronto ecosystem will have a bit less capital at the beginning. Can go into why Techstars has suffered, but what's interesting is if you go back pre-COVID, Toronto became a hot spot to open up a local arm of an incubator or accelerator. You saw many open, and we've now seen them slowly pull away. There was another one that pulled away last year to relocate to, again, I think the Bay Area or New York.
Mm-hmm.
Techstars, it's not clear they're shutting down, but they're definitely not fully committed here. And there's two things. One, just not great positive news for the early stages. And two, what's interesting here is Techstars was taking a global platform and trying to just, put it here. Sunil did a good job of trying to Canadianize it or Torontoize it, but
Okay.
it's interesting that seeing that if it's not started here, there's a bit less commitment to here when the times get a bit tougher. So
Okay.
overall, I say it's, we need seed capital. It's good to have Golden there. I'd say it's a net positive overall, this news. And I think
Yeah.
the other thing here is the saying, hey, as Canada, as Toronto became hot, we saw more international tension. As the markets have cooled off globally, we've seen people retrench. And so we should be looking for Canadian, I'm a bit biased here, but I think we should be looking for Canadian entities that are investing in the ecosystem, that understand the ecosystem and compete globally. And that's how we're going to win.
Okay. So not so much as, worrying about North America wide, but you think it just needs to be more of a like Canadian only focus, and that would be a key to success for some?
I think the later stage you get as a startup,
Okay.
the more global the capital is. I think early stage, lots of people say venture capitalists are just selling cash. I think at early stage, pre-seed, seed, maybe there's a benefit of understanding the local market and how to support
Okay.
companies and
Yep.
making sure they're globally ambitious. And I think there's an inherent advantage of having a team that came from Canada, can think globally, and support and know how to support the Canadian companies, and they live or die by this ecosystem.
Okay.
So I do think there is, the right way to do stuff, and I think being based out of starting out of Canada is a huge help.
Okay. I think, yeah, that's, I guess something I never really thought of in terms of what would make, I guess, in this case, an incubator or accelerator more successful, especially depending on who you're trying to invest in and where the priority is. So I think something that we'll pay attention to and perhaps have more updates down the road as we know. So our next headline, just to keep things moving, we have a lot we want to talk about, is 1Password acquiring Collide to expand their product suite. So I've given a little bit of it away as, I'm just saying what they're trying to do with this acquisition, but maybe just go into the news a little bit more and also why it's interesting, why we want to talk about it.
So like you said, 1Password on last Tuesday announced they acquired Collide, an endpoint security platform.
Mm-hmm.
So this is interesting because this continues the trend of Canada's largest but not public tech companies of growing into acquisition. This is, I think, 1Password's third acquisition, and I think they're going to be one of the more active acquirers in the ecosystem. They have a whole team looking at strategic plans, and that includes acquisitions.
Okay. And like I said, I may have, revealed a little bit as to why this acquisition happened, but hoping you can just maybe break it down further aside from just like upgrading the product suite.
So this appears to be both a talent and product acquisition.
Okay.
On the talent front, as we mentioned, I think earlier this year, it appears that it's getting tougher and tougher to find great talent again. The market's tightened up. Maybe it doesn't feel that way to everyone, but it definitely is. And in this case, all of Collide's 30 employees will be joining 1Password. It was explicitly announced, so they must value the talent. The second thing is the product. Collide does helps enterprises understand the mix of work and personal issued devices that employees are using to access data in the company's software. And so they provide secure and safe access from either type of device. So it understands, hey, is this device one that should be accessing this data, and makes it safer. This area is called endpoint cybersecurity, and by acquiring Collide, it enhances 1Password's offering in the space, so it's a better product suite.
And as you've talked about before, sometimes you see a lot of these acquisitions happen because of the funding market. In this case, is this why this one also happened, or was there some other reason?
I think this was a traditional strategic acquisition, which was not coming from a point of weakness from Collide. If you look at their history, they've raised roughly 27 million US. They have 250 customers and only 30 employees. This sounds like a company that has been relatively capital efficient, probably has a lot of cash on the balance sheet, has a lot of momentum, and doesn't have to sell. I think this acquisition made strategic sense for both parties. Lots of founders want to see their products used by, and teams want to see their products used by many people. 1Password has 100,000 plus customers. So if Collide, 250 customers now access 100,000 customers, they can quickly get more distribution, see more companies using them. It's probably easier to sell as a bundled suite than a separate software. Flip side is 1Password gets a great team. They enhance their product, get better share of wallet from those 100,000 customers. And I don't know how many of those net customers from Collide of 250 are net new. Nice to have, probably doesn't really move the revenue needle. Again, remember, 1Password's about 250 million run rate. So 250 customers, even if they're doing 100,000 each, is no more than 10%. Actually, 10% would be huge. But
right. Yeah. I mean, all makes sense when you kind of explain it in that way. So just again, we unpacked a lot and why this made sense and it was beneficial for both. But is there any last takeaways that just the community should care about around like an acquisition piece like this?
So again, I want to reemphasize, I think the biggest Canadian tech companies that are doing well, that aren't public and aren't being, are in a position to build the muscle to acquire. This is 1Password's third acquisition. I think we can expect many more from them in the future. And finally, a reminder that the best acquisitions are ones that are coming from when the acquired company is in a position of strength, can control its own destiny, can say no, but there's a strategic rationale. Again, don't know the details around this acquisition, but my guess is it was pretty good.
Okay. And just, I know we're kind of moving things along. There is numerous headlines for our lightning round. There's one in particular that I'm going to start with because I have just a few more questions script for you around this one. Just for the lightning round, Armilla AI, recently announced a raise. Maybe just start with the news, how much the raise was, and I'll kind of go into maybe more about why I think it might be interesting.
Armilla AI raised $4.5 million USD in a round led by Mistral Venture Partners. The company has recently started to offer Armilla Guarantee, a quality assessment and warranty program for AI models.
Okay, and why is something like this particularly interesting for our community and those listening?
Well, it's interesting. Every time you have a solution to a problem, a new solution, you think the world gets 100% better. Lots of times these new solutions add new problems. In this case, what we're seeing here is AI models potentially have an issue, and so Armilla is quickly offering a new solution to a new problem. And so what they're basically doing is providing a warranty that's certified, an AI model they've certified will perform as promised.
Okay, and so a couple more follow-up questions. So I guess why has AI created this new problem?
So I think there's a few ways AI can create a problem, right? So people adopt an AI model with the idea that you give it input A and it gives you output B, and that makes sense. So a few things that could go wrong. One is it could hallucinate, just give you wrong information. And so, when me or you're writing an essay, trying to get something, and we can read and check it's fine, but sometimes
Fact checking
hallucinations or the
involved.
way that the answer provides can cause problems. One is it can look at what happened with Air Canada last week. I think it was 2 weeks ago. The chatbot, they
Yeah.
lost a lawsuit because the chatbot basically made up a policy about bereavement policy, which is wrong. So the client followed that, and then Air Canada said we're not going to honor it. Well, basically the model didn't act like it was supposed to because it made up a new policy that it told the customer.
Right.
Another way, which is not as obvious, is these models can be biased. So right, it could the model should be, lots of models have to be unbiased, and it could be validated later on that 6 months into it's providing mortgages in a biased way. Maybe it's saying, hey, you look back and it disproportionately unfavors females in how it's providing loans. So these are risks that when if you bought a software historically, you would think it would perform like it's supposed to. So the net new problem here is AI is a bit of a black box. And when you're buying as an enterprise, you want it to work as possible. But if it doesn't, it causes negative consequences. So that's a net new problem.
Right. And I think something that I know I've run into with AI and just ChatGPT in particular is sometimes it's outdated information that it's pulling too. Like you can only prompt as much as you think it needs to be prompted, but there's an element of, as you said, like fact checking that's still involved. It's the element of just fully being able to trust, I guess, AI to create something that you're asking it to. There's still obviously the human element that's needed. So that's a good one to highlight in terms of, I guess, the problems or the new problems that are being created, just given it's an early solution. And I think in general around like AI, we could probably classify a lot of, these types of company as doing such. What are the risks in, I guess, providing an early solution?
Well, I think there's multiple, and this won't be exhaustive. I think first of all is you don't know how the problem's going to mature over time. AI is changing quickly. And you may be providing a solution for a problem that goes away, a problem that changes materially. So that's the first thing, right? You might be having a running target, your solution quickly is ineffective in 6 months. I think second of all, you don't know how big the risk here is. In particular, here they're providing insurance. Maybe the models they certify have more problems they haven't well understood, and they're quickly have negative cash flow because they're providing a solution that doesn't work. Third thing is you don't know what the competition set's going to be. Right now, it used to be the first mover advantage. Here you can have a quick, fast follower can build an enhanced product. So basically the question is, how do you build a solution that matures with the industry that doesn't have losses and actually has compounding advantages? And there's states where you're too early or too late, and too early is just as bad as being too late. Also, there might not be demand here because no one really likes buying insurance to have a problem, right? So maybe one or two stories, they could be trying to sell this for 24, 36 months. And there's not enough issues that have been realized, and it's just hard to get the momentum going. And maybe in 4 or 5 years is a problem that's needed. So there's a timing issue, there's a definition issue, there's a risk and competition issue. They're not necessarily exclusive to net new problems, but they could be exclusive, but they are harder at the beginning of an industry.
And just, I guess, like lastly, in like within this final takeaway, like how, I guess, is Armilla and also companies similar to them, like how would they be, I guess, avoiding the problems or solving the problems or trying to, I guess, differentiate themselves? And maybe you can just loop that into any just final takeaways you may have.
I think one thing Armilla has done here well is they partner with traditional reinsurers and insurers to provide sort of the policy, and they're enabling the companies to have a policy. So they have companies with deep pockets backing them. I think the key thing for them is to make sure they pay close attention to the market and how it matures, and actually trying to create demand and find the early adopters. I think the takeaway here is, despite the challenges, there is going to be a lot of new opportunities coming out of AI, the adoption of AI. Another one is I can think of as the right to be forgotten. In SEO, in Europe and I think North America, you can contact Google and say, hey, if someone searches Alex Norman, I don't want any of my results to appear. The belief is this is going to happen in generative AI. Generative AI is training the whole of the web, or a lot of the web, and then someone might search for I don't know, host of Toronto-based tech podcasts, and Alex Norman comes up. The belief is that I should be able to go to OpenAI and Gemini and say, I don't want Alex Norman to appear in any
Have it do the opposite.
Yeah,
Yep.
I don't want it to appear.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, no one has a clue how to do that. So there's another problem that is clearly obvious from generative AI being adopted. So I'm sure there's going to be more. So there's each new set of technology brings new sets of problems and new opportunities.
Okay. Obviously that one in particular was a little bit more complex, and I think there was more to unpack. So just a couple more that I'm sure you can hit on quickly. Toronto-based Helica, they recently raised. So what's the news there? And also just again, why is it interesting for the community?
So Helica raised $8 million USD for its Web3 gaming analytics platform led by Pantera Capital. Interesting, Pantera Capital is a Web3 based fund. States Helica claims to have surpassed 7 figures in annual revenue. The company appears to focus on Web3 companies, but its success seems to come from a combination of using AI and serving a wider group of companies. So here's a Web3 company that seems to have matured a bit, found use in Web3, but has gone to traditional, has incorporated AI, and has gone to a more traditional customer base. So it's just interesting to see, but it's also interesting to see Web3 company get funding.
Yeah, it is. And I don't think we've heard about a Web3 company getting funding in a while. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
There's been some out there in the market. We just haven't covered them.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think we've covered them very much, at least on this show. And lastly, just another piece of Toronto-based news. Yeah. So the news was interesting.
Yeah, Helios is a developer platform for crypto applications, announced $9.5 million by Foundation Capital. What the company does is enables developers to quickly create applications on a Solana blockchain. So this is interesting. Coupled with Helica, you got 2 crypto fundings announced, pretty decent sized ones, both led by US VCs. This is coupled with the rebound in the price of a few crypto assets. It looks like we're starting to see use cases for crypto and blockchain. It looks like we're starting to see a rebound in assets and rebound in interest in pricing. So looks like we might be talking a lot more about blockchain and crypto this year. So that's kind of exciting.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting, because that was one of the things where I think there was so much hype and just news around that in general. And then I think there was just such a fall off around, no one was really talking about it. I know like regulatory conversations were obviously at play and coming up. So interesting to hear that there's a resurgence around crypto and all of that. So yeah, maybe we'll be talking about it more on the show this year. Last thing to, I guess, just point out before we go, we just like to highlight all of the events that we have coming up for the community. And of course, interject, Alex, if there's anyone you want to highlight or dive more into. But we have TechTO Marketing tonight at 1:11. So just very exciting to obviously bring the community together and make it more specific around the marketing sector within tech, and obviously how that is ever changing and evolving, and just things that are important to note. We've got, again, some speakers from Google, KFC, that are all coming to share their wisdom with us. So if you don't have tickets, there's still some available. That's tonight. And then Best of TechTO, that's our big one of our big ones, I should say, for the year. And that's going to be at Toronto City Hall. So I've never been to City Hall. If you haven't been to City Hall,
if you can make it, it's worth going to.
Yeah, I don't know many people that have been to City Hall chambers, so that'll be very cool. So that one's on March 18th. And then we're back in Montreal on April 16th, which is very exciting. So great to kind of, see the community out there and keep building it. And then TechTO Together back at Rotman on April 24th. And as you can see, tickets are on our website, techto.org. As always, I'll post in the show notes. Anything you would like to highlight before we go?
No, just make it out. Come meet the community. I think everyone, if you haven't, I think it's one thing to do stuff digital, one thing to listen to podcasts or videos, but it's another to meet people in person.
For sure. And we're also very grateful to the community so far who's come and shown up and, wanted to learn and meet new people in person. We've had just unbelievable attendance and turnout this year so far at our events. It's only February. So just very exciting to see how the rest of the year goes. Alex, again, thanks for joining us and breaking down just these important pieces of news for the community. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. And we will be back in a few weeks with another edition of TechTO Quick Takes.
We're in the business of delivering impossible things. We're in the business of delivering things that nobody's ever seen before.
If you build that culture, you'll come up with really cool and innovative stuff, and literally could be in the next multi-billion-dollar idea.
So this conversation is largely going to be about scaling yourself and scaling your leadership team.
I want to talk about one of the biggest struggles that I think a lot of startups face early on, which is building initial traction.